Greetings and welcome to another video by Sir Mike the Hedge Knight. We are in the midst of another weekly event, Battle of the Bastards. It's odd that this is not one of my favorite events, even though my team is sort of built for it, which we'll get into in this video. I just find it a little boring. The biggest problem in Battle of the Bastards is you're going to get hit with arrows every 3 turns, including at the start of combat. All of your characters are going to take some damage, and they're going to get hit with bleed. And what makes this problematic is, like in all events, the number of turns you take will reduce your score. So you want to win battles as quickly as possible. But if your characters are constantly getting hit, which will reduce your points for hit points remaining, and having bleed inflicted upon them, it's hard to use your skills. And if it's hard to use your skills, it's hard to win battles quickly. And the most point-producing aspect of this event is not taking bleed damage. Now, bleed, when you have bleed on you, it doesn't do anything unless you use your skills. So if you have a combat where you don't use any skills ever, you will get 75,000 points because you didn't take any bleed damage. If you do use a skill while you have bleed on you, you lose something like 6,750 points. You lose a tremendous amount of points. So what you should be doing, and we'll go through a combat or two, is always checking your characters if you're about to use a skill and making sure they don't have bleed. And what makes this tricky is there's these crates on the board. If you match gems next to them once, they get damaged. If you match them a second time, they will break. And when the crates break, they will grant bleed immunity to a character for 3 turns. But what's tricky is the bleed immunity is the bleed symbol with a red line through it. So if you look down quickly, you could get confused. And you say, oh, I've got bleed immunity. Oh, wait, that was bleed. Or vice versa. Oh, I can't use a skill. He has bleed. And then you look down and go, oh, wait, that's bleed immunity. So unlike where buffs are green and debuffs are red, like the bleed immunity is red because it's the bleed symbol with a red line through it. So it seems like a small thing, but I will say that in the past, I've made this mistake. So that's generally what happens. And let's take a look at, they give, like all events, there's going to be a little bit of a bump for certain characters. So you'll see the 4 legendaries here are the 4 legendaries available through the event token summons. And while most events, I think, give like a 35% buff, they're getting 100% attack and defense buff, and tenacity, which I'm not so worried about the tenacity, but attack and defense. That's a really large bump. Using some of these champions, if you have them leveled up and they get this bonus, can help. And more importantly, all the free folk. So here it's Tormund and 1/1, and we're going to go through a couple of others. All free folk are immune to bleed from the arrows. I'm not a big fan of the free folk faction, but I have actually worked some of them in there this time around for the first time ever, and it's actually working pretty well. Let's talk about what characters you should use and ways of getting around this bleed so that you can win matches quickly. Every event seems to be geared toward a particular family. I feel like Rook's Rest is geared toward the Greens for speed, Robb's War, the Starks and Boltons for ice and bleed. The Egg event is based on fire for points, so that's the Targaryens. And this one, they don't really come out and say it, but if they're putting bleed on you and you're trying to win quickly without using skills, well, what's the other way of doing damage? And it's gem damage. So if nothing else, if you had 5 Baratheons on your team and got a 100% gem damage bonus, you could do a lot more damage with your gems and not rely on skills. So I sort of feel like this event is geared toward the Baratheons anyway, but more importantly, and I know I'm being repetitive with some of my other videos, I've said it before, the original Stannis, the old, now that we have 2, the old Stannis Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End, is an essential character in this game. You just have to have Stannis. And why do we have to have Stannis? It's his passive. When an enemy is defeated, Stannis removes 3 debuffs from all Baratheon allies. So if you were using a 5-member Baratheon team, but you're doing some good gem damage, so you kill an enemy with gems, and Stannis wipes all the bleed away. Now you do have to be careful throughout the combat. If the combat lasts a couple of turns, because sometimes you'll kill an enemy, now the enemy goes. And every 3 turns, more arrows come in, doing more damage and applying more bleed. So sometimes you will defeat an enemy. Stannis will clean your team of bleed, but then new bleed comes in. And if you're not paying attention and you have a character ready with a skill and you hit them too quick, they'll have bleed and you'll say, wait, I just got rid of the bleed. You did, but new bleed comes on every 3 turns. It doesn't hit all the characters. It'll hit 3, 4, or 5. I don't know how they figure it out. It's somewhat random. So Stannis Baratheon has to be on your team. I can't say it enough. Old Stannis, absolutely essential character, absolutely essential for this event. In addition, he destroys 2 gems whenever an enemy is defeated. Now at 4-star, he destroys, you'll see here, he'll prioritize power-ups, which creates all sorts of cascades, giving your team all sorts of stamina, which will get your skills ready. So he clears the bleed and gives everyone stamina so that perhaps their skills are ready and now they have no bleed. So now they can unload. And if you get him to 6-star, it goes from 2 power-ups to 4. The next, what I consider to be essential character for this event is Joffrey Baratheon, the future king. And it's his leadership ability. He is going to be your leader. When an enemy drops below 50% hit points, he spawns 2 coins and destroys 3 random gems. I think that kicked in at 5-star, so I think at 4 and below, it's 1 coin and 2 gems. Still good. And again, if you've seen my Baratheon video, I've discussed this, so I'll only touch on it quickly, but there's a little bit of synergy there. You get an enemy below 50 by doing some damage to him. Joffrey will destroy some gems, which could create some cascades, which could even kill an enemy. When you kill an enemy, Stannis destroys power-ups or gems if you don't have them leveled high enough, which can create more cascades, which can get other enemies down below 50%, which can trigger Joffrey, and back and forth we go. So this is the combo. They're both Baratheons. So again, we're trying to get some Baratheons for some gem damage bonus so that we can kill things very quickly. But absolutely, Stannis and Joffrey lead. And we're trying to create cascades. We're trying to do things without turns. What I use as my 3rd Baratheon, and in the first difficulty in normal, I only used 3, and then I went into a couple of free folk, and I'll talk about which free folk I'm using and why. I use Melisandre, and she's not the strongest of the Baratheons, but she has an AoE, which is an area of effect attack. And that's one of the things I'm looking for in this event. Single target attacks are great, but because Joffrey will trigger whenever enemies get below 50%, I'd rather hit 3 enemies if there are, very often you're fighting waves of 3. I'd rather hit all 3 enemies and try to get 2 or 3 of them below 50%, which will trigger Joffrey multiple times. Those gems and cascades will then kill enemies, which will trigger Stannis, and he'll break more gems, like I said before, the synergy. So I prefer to have skill attacks that will hit multiple enemies over single target attacks. Now there's good uses, and Joffrey is a single target attack skill guy and does significant damage, which is really good when you're only facing 1 enemy. And you don't want to burn your AoE attacks. You want to save that for when there's 2 or 3 enemies on the screen. But when there's 1 guy left standing, if Joffrey's ready, I'm like, okay, good time to use Joffrey. He's got a strong single target attack. He'll kill him. And remember, the free folk are immune to bleed. So I never have to worry that I just went through turn 3. I've erased bleed with Stannis, but now new bleed's coming in. Tormund can't get bleed from arrows. And his skill, it's a normal speed skill, so it's going to fill up relatively quickly. And it hits everybody. Now, he does extra damage when enemies are shielded. I don't think there's any enemies here that shield, so it doesn't do a tremendous amount of damage, but it hits everybody. And when you have Joffrey as lead, that's what you got to do. Hit everybody, even if you get 1 of the 3 down below 50%. That'll trigger Joffrey, and then you'll see when we show a couple combats, it's going to do the rest. So, kind of like Tormund, been using him, immune to bleed, definitely worth consideration. Now, previously, with my Baratheon theme, I used Varys. Great character, Varys, but his skill doesn't do any damage. So if he's the only one with the skill ready, I can't do damage, and I can't trigger Joffrey, and I can't trigger Stannis, and I can't do cascades. Whenever you have a character using their skill, you're really hoping that they can wound or defeat enemies to trigger a bunch of cascades, get stamina for your other guys, so that you don't have to waste turns matching gems. Tormund, definitely worth consideration. And the other free folk that I want to go over, Lord of Bones. And if you saw my Rob's War videos, the Lord of Bones is an absolutely essential character for that event. So hopefully you've already got him leveled up. Again, he's a free folk, so he's immune to the bleed. He's got a fast speed skill, so it fills up very quickly, and he hits everybody. The fact that he puts on ice and brittle, like we're not doing ice and brittle, like that's not the goal. But again, it's area of effect attack. Let's talk about the event, and then we'll get into combat. The best score that I can achieve per chapter is 158.5, and we'll talk about that very, very quickly, and then we'll move in. But you get there are 4 ways of getting score. 2 of them you're going to get maximized every combat if you've watched this video. One is 10,000 for damage done. Well, if you defeat all enemies, you get that 10,000 no matter what. So 10,000 for damage done, 75,000 for not using a skill while a character has bleed. The other 2 is you start with 65,000 for turns remaining, and I haven't found a way to win on turn 0. I always have to take at least 1 turn, and hopefully exactly 1 turn by matching gems. So instead of 65, I'm getting 64. I lose 1,000 there. And hit points remaining, you're supposed to get 10,000. This is a bit bugged. I've mentioned it on the official Discord. Other players have as well. The initial round of combat, you get hit by a bunch of arrows. And even if you have a bunch of free folk that are immune to bleed, you're not immune to the damage. So if you take damage from arrows, your hit points remaining, instead of 10,000, they're giving you 9,500, which is unfortunate because I use Davos Seaworth at the hard and higher difficulties, and he has a passive heal. So when combat's over, I'm at full health. And if you're at full health, you should get the full 10,000. So a little bit unfair. It is, but it's unfair across the board. It is what it is. So I lose 1,000 points for taking a turn, 500 points for the arrow damage. So the most I can get per chapter is 158.5. There are 20 chapters. If you multiply that out, it's 3,170,000. That is my maximum. I did see a group where someone in normal had over 3,190,000. So they are finding a way to win on turn 0. Now, the only ways that I can think of, there's some characters in the game, remember, the greens start with very high stamina. You have some characters in the game that can start with full stamina, but you can't use your skills on turn 0 because you have bleed on you. And I don't think there are any free folk that are immune to that bleed that have full stamina. So how do you use your skills without even matching gems? So the only other thing I came up with was characters like Jaime Lannister or Areo Hotah as leader, they will hit at the start of combat an enemy, and perhaps they one-hit them and kill them. So if you have them as a leader, they hit before you take a turn, they kill an enemy, that could trigger Stannis. He can remove debuffs from his Baratheon allies. He'll break some gems. Perhaps that creates a really good cascade that will fill some other Baratheon stamina bar. There's a lot of luck in there, because again, if you're using Areo or Jaime as a lead, that means you're not using Joffrey as a lead. And most of my cascades come from Joffrey, from enemies fall. He breaks 3 gems when enemies fall below 50%. So I'm not sure how to do it. If you do, please comment and let me know how, because I'm insanely curious and I really want to start experimenting and find a way, because I've seen it done. I've seen people with over 3,190,000, and I just don't know how they do it. Okay, that being said, let us get into some combat. So what I'm trying to do, I guess, on my first turn, we're at treacherous difficulty. So we want to see if we can create any cascades, because we're really trying to minimize turns taken. So I've got a little bit of a red-purple combo below. Red is my strongest color. Now, one of these lanes is not going to hit anyone, but we'll get some stamina. We'll do some damage. Let's see what this does. Yep, didn't get anyone, unfortunately, below 50%. Did not trigger Joffrey. Don't really see that much else here. This may wind up being a pretty bad example. Gonna have to do some yellow over here. Now we do get him below 50%, but unfortunately the cascades didn't kill him. It looks like we broke a crate, so you'll see that Joffrey has that bleed immunity symbol on him. We'll get rid of some of these useless green gems, create a little cascade here. Stannis does a little something, and these guys in the corners, they just weren't getting hit. Only one lane was hitting them, which is unfortunate, but, well, at least I have some skills ready. I've got some area of effect skills. Now, Davos only put some Seekers on the board, but if he has no bleed, let's do it. And he scouts an enemy, and when a scouted enemy is defeated, he'll break the Seekers. That will help create cascades as well. Melisandre before Stannis, almost always. Sometimes at the lower levels, I'll split them up, because Melisandre can kill people, but you could see here, she just doesn't do enough damage. Stannis should kill them or get them pretty close. Then we break a bunch of gems. We're getting stamina. And this is why I mentioned in the video, in prior iterations of the event, I used Varus because he was Baratheon. But if I had Varus right now with his purple skill ready, he doesn't do any damage. Tormund does. So at least I have a chance. Let's put Davos. Let's get the scout in the back so that when cascades happen, at least it'll hit that character that's kind of hiding back there. Let's see if Tormund can hit anybody hard enough. No, didn't get anyone to 50%, didn't cause any cascades. That is unfortunate. Red, this is a rough battle because red is my strongest color, and we're fighting a lot of blue enemies. So not going to do so well here, but we'll do what we can. And look at that. Didn't make much of a difference. Got someone below 50, created cascades, somebody got hit with scout, and that was that. So now we could we'll put Davos on just because nobody has bleed. Joffrey's our single target guy. He kills him. So we didn't do too well. And yet we broke 155. What I'm trying to get, at least to Treacherous, I'm trying to average 155. I've got some 156s. I have a couple that are 154s. If you get 155 per combat, there's 20 combats. You end with 3.1. I don't think I've ever ended with 3.1 in Treacherous. I don't know if that's going to be enough. But again, I don't have 6 and 7 star guys. I can't get 158.5 at this level. I just can't do it. So this is pretty much, if I get like 152, 153, I might replay it. I'm looking for 155, 156. I might even have a 157 in here somewhere. But yeah, here's a 157 where I must have gotten really lucky with cascades. So that's pretty much it. I mean, I can show you other combats at other difficulties. It's like I said at the start, just not my favorite event. It doesn't change much difficulty to difficulty. I don't change my roster too much. This team that I have here is probably the same team that I'm going to use at Kingslayer, unless I do put Varys in just to get the 5th Baratheon to get that extra 50% gem bonus. So that is Battle of the Bastards. Feel free to comment below. Let me know your thoughts, how you're doing. Hopefully you rank well, get some legendary gear. And we will see you soon.